Promises burn, ashes in the wind. Scripts they wrote, soaked in sin. Voices silenced, buried deep, but the roots grow strong, they never sleep. Oh, steel and greed won't build a home, can't kill the truth with a hollow throne. Hands will rise, clenched in fists, history's patterns, they won't be missed. Echoes linger, they're drilled home. Can't kill the truth with a hollow drone. Hands will rise, clenched in fists, history's patterns, they won't be missed.
Well, hello and welcome to another Truth podcast. This evening, it wasn't a live stream that was planned, but I guess that I'm here because I see certain things happening in the media and I hear certain politicians really, I'm going to say, stoking tensions and causing divisions, which could translate into, well, you know what's happened in Northern Ireland in the past. Is that people then are set against each other. But it is so blatant to see that particular political parties here in Northern Ireland are really stoking tensions, really for their own political gain. Now, I'm going to play a short video clip, and then I'm going to come back after playing this video clip. But I'm going to give a bit of context before that I play this video clip. Now, just a few days ago, we heard the great and the good on the media, Mr. Nolan, Stephen Nolan of the BBC Radio Ulster and BBC Radio 5 Live. Whenever Stephen would have been out with a report about a man seen with a tool bag, and he said he had a chainsaw and he cut really the Irish piece out of a sign, a street sign, which had both English and Irish in that sign. Now, maybe Stephen doesn't know the difference between maybe a chainsaw and an angle grinder, and I think he updated it to suggest that it may have been an angle grinder later. But Stephen's first claim was that somebody with a chainsaw was seen cutting out a little sign. Now, let's just give a bit of context with reference to this sign. And today I visited the area of Shandon Park in Belfast to try to take a look to see the sign and really to try to understand why that it is that sign is there. So firstly, I'm going to play a short video clip and then I'll come back and we'll talk some more. And we're really here under the title of that politicians and the mainstream media are intentionally trying to cause division, stoking tensions, and in a way that would put communities in Northern Ireland, it would set them against each other, as opposed to communities actually joining together, uniting, and really seeing where the problem lies, really seeing where the creators of these tensions actually are, and in a way that people would stand against them and not be driven to stand against each other as it has happened in the past. So I'm going to play a short video clip and then I'll be straight back and we'll talk about this some more. So I'm standing here at the junction of Kensington Road and a place called, is it Shandon Park? And yeah, so if we were to walk up that way, this actually is You got to excuse me, I had a bit of technical difficulty there with reference to the little video clip, but let me explain what it was all about. And then I'll come back. What actually happened was that the wrong video clip was loaded to the software here. But in Shandon Park, which is just in East Belfast, it's off the Knock Carriageway, there was a sign, a dual language sign, which was erected in Shandon Park. Now, there was a sample vote which was put to the area of Shandon Park, and looking at the figures, there was something in the region of 16.8% of the people that was surveyed in Shandon Park. Well, what they did was they responded, and 16.8% thereabouts said that they wanted an Irish language sign. Now, on the other hand, there was 49.8 thereabouts, almost 50% of the people said, well, no thank you, we don't want an Irish language sign. Now, because of the policy that was set down by politicians who were intentionally trying to cause and stoke divisions between communities, well, because of a policy that was laid down, well, their form of democracy is that the 16.8 people got to override the almost 49 to 50% of people who didn't want that sign in their area. So, I mean, would that be a recipe for, I'm going to say, good community cohesion? Or would that be a recipe for really causing tensions, stoking tensions, and in a way that drives citizens apart? Now, at the weekend, someone decided that they would go along, and what they would do is that they obviously felt strongly that they didn't want that Irish language sign. And what they did was that they took an angle grinder, contrary to what Mr. Nolan had said. They took an angle grinder to the sign and they cut the little piece of Irish, I'll move over to my name there. They just cut round the Irish part of the sign and they cut that out. The media were straight on it. Stephen Nolan being the first person of BBC Radio Ulster and BBC Radio 5 Live. And then the PSNI were on to it. And then the politicians, the great and the good, they're all out saying that this is a hate crime. The PSNI were saying that this was a sectarian hate crime. Well, I really want to ask the question to people and try to get people to understand that, I mean, was it a sectarian hate crime to put that sign actually in Shandon Park? Contrary to the wishes of the greater number of people within Shandon Park. I'll mention those figures again. 16.8% of the people thereabouts wanted a sign, and 49.8 thereabouts, almost 50% of the people decided that they didn't want that sign. And there were some people which didn't respond to the survey at all. So in a democracy, what would happen is that sign wouldn't be put there. Now, Shandon Road moves on to an area which sort of borders, and the extension of Shandon Park is a place called Kensington Road. Now, when I went to the junction of Shandon Road today, and I will drop a video onto Truth Podcast shortly after I do this clip, but when I went there, how bizarre is this, that Kensington Road, it has written in English just Kensington Road. And then, as that road stops and Shandon Park extends from it, the sign is actually off, but I did see the pictures of the sign just a few days ago. And, there would have been like dual language. There would have been English and Irish on that sign, as I say, in a completely undemocratic way. But the form of democracy that the Belfast City Council, which is laid down, and this is where I come to the point whereby that I say that politicians are actually stoking tensions and causing divisions where divisions should not exist by corrupting democracy to allow for, and wait for it, 15% of people, if they say that they want the sign and 85% of the people in the street say they don't want the sign, well, the 15% in their form of democracy, well, they get to override the 85%. And is that right in a democracy? Or is that just like many other things in Northern Ireland, that it is the complete corruption of anything, any form, which is really there let's put it this way. Democracy is the greatest asset that people have for solving community tensions. Because if there's contention with reference to subject, Well, if there's a democratic vote and the greater number of people say, well, look, we would rather have that, or the greater number of people say, well, okay, well, we don't really want that. Well, it is generally accepted. Well, it has been generally accepted up until, I guess, a few years ago, whenever the Brexit process would have took place. It was generally accepted that democracy, the democratic decision of the people, is the greater number of people, and that's what actually rules over the minority of people who really wanted to vote in a different way. So what we have with these politicians, and this just doesn't stop at Belfast City Council. This goes right around this country. This goes right across the United Kingdom. This goes on into Ireland, and where the politicians are literally corrupting the very mechanisms which is there to solve community tensions. Now, given that the mainstream media are littered, absolutely obliterated with activists in the media, I mean, just a few years ago, we seen conservative voices being pushed out, being, pensioned off out of the BBC, to the point whereby that there are no conservative voices in the mainstream media anymore. And then when we look at the other versions of mainstream media, I mean, we heard Radio Talkback today, in where that they're ramping up these tensions. This is more tensions being caused by politicians, being caused by the mainstream media, in where that I mean, you only have to turn your BBC on at any point in the day, and all you're going to hear is this talk of a so-called United Ireland, and that there's a growing, there's a growing pace of people that wants this United Ireland. When the facts and the figures absolutely show that that isn't the case. And then we heard the so-called today, this morning on Radio Ulster, on Stephen Nolan's show, the so-called, let's just say, middle ground, quote unquote, Naomi Long of the Alliance Party, and where that now what she's doing is that she's again stoking tensions in this country between people to the point whereby, now let's just make one thing straight, that in this country people have lost their lives because of what politicians have done before. And yet this so-called middle ground, Naomi Long of the Alliance Party, the leader of the Alliance Party, well, she's out now calling on the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland to lay down a particular set of circumstances and where that a border poll could be called. Whenever that we've heard from, like, for example, the Professor John Tong, University of Liverpool, who the University of Liverpool have conducted several polls on really what should constitute a border poll. And they constantly say, well, the circumstances are not arrived at and whether this could ever happen. Now, let me talk about something else for a moment. And let's make this clear. The title of this is Politicians Unnecessarily, intentionally causing divisions, and the mainstream media running with those divisions and really stoking the tensions even further, to the point whereby that, well, someone could lose their lives, and no one of these two sets of peoples, being the politicians that are stoking these tensions and the BBC, will be able to wash their hands off what would happen, or what can happen, and what shouldn't happen, by the way, that someone, God forbid, may actually lose their lives because of these people who are genuinely, clear and verifiably stoking tensions amongst Protestants and Catholics here in Northern Ireland. It's completely out of order. So let's talk about this Irish language for a moment or two. This goes back for quite some years, in where that Republicans, Sinn Féin, the IRA, well, they have weaponized the Irish language, weaponized it so much so that unionists don't want it about the place. Any right-minded unionist doesn't want it about the place. We have these pretend unionists, these people like Linda Irvine, these people, that, well, Naomi Long today, even, where she says that she's undecided with reference to border poll. Look, nonsense. If you sit and you listen to that woman calling for a border poll, after which that it's going to happen every 7 years under the terms of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, well, all that's going to do is to create tension after tension after tension. And, well, that's what the Alliance Party thrives on, is tensions between people. That's what Sinn Féin thrives on, is tensions between people. And we as people really need to begin a process of standing fairly and squarely against these people. We seen last week that people actually were so frustrated with the Alliance Party, are so frustrated that whenever they go and they ask Naomi Long as Justice Minister to come and talk to them about their genuine concerns, well, Naomi Long won't actually come and talk to these people. So people last week, they took it upon themselves to go and protest in the street where Naomi Long lives. Now, no one should ever want to see the circumstances whereby that happens. However, I mean, can you blame them? Because these politicians are not listening. These politicians are constantly causing divisions. These politicians are constantly stoking tensions between people. And in Northern Ireland, unless they've forgotten, people has lost their lives through people just like that in the past, and we don't want to see that happening in the future. So we really need to stand against these people for the divisions that they're causing. We really need to reach out into the other community, the nationalist community, and we really need to get them in concert to stand against the creators of division, those people who are stoking tensions, those people who are using a language really to cause divisions. Back in 2019, I teamed up with a professor of the Gaelic language from University College Dublin, a man called Kieran O'Quigley, a man who would literally sit here with me today and would tell you that he doesn't want to see his language being trailed through the gutter. He doesn't want to see his language being weaponized, and he doesn't want Republicans to use this language to cause and stoke tensions here in Northern Ireland. So Kieran O'Quigley was kind enough to take me to various places to really to say that really, do we really need these divisions in our country right now when people are really trying to reconcile with each other? We don't want to give these people being the destabilizers like the Alliance Party, the destabilizers like Sinn Féin, the destabilizers like the mainstream BBC media. We don't want to give these people the ammunition to stoke tensions, and what for? For views on a dying BBC. I mean, nobody listens to the BBC anymore. Nobody wants to hear the BBC because all they do is it's just either government propaganda or it's really piffle that they're talking, and it's filled with absolute untruth. So really what I'm here for this evening is to say that these tensions shouldn't be being stoked, and people from both sides of the community needs to come out and needs to stand against these people. So as for the Irish language, there was a man called Shane Walsh, and I'm going to pop up something on my screen in a wee second. And Shane Walsh really looked back. This is nothing new. There was a thing called a Republican nation building strategy, and it centered around really the Irish language and some of the Gaelic games and so on. And, you know, who is Shane Walsh? Let's explain who this man is and the type of extremist that this man really is. So Shane Walsh was a dirty protester, you know, at the time before the blanket men, they called him, at the time before, say, the hunger strikes and so on. He was in the Maze prison. He was in the Maze prison with people like Bobby Sands and so on. So I really want just to point out the type of extremist this is. And then what we'll do is we'll explain a wee bit with reference what Shane Walsh, the Republican movements, the Provisional IRA, and I mean, the man Kieran O'Quigley that I talk about, who's the professor of the Gaelic language, you know, I mean, I remember saying to him that really after what you're explaining, after you telling me that Gaelic speakers don't even understand some of the words that these people are saying, well, he said to me it's known of one or two things. It's either known as Pidgin Irish, Long Kesh Irish. You know, that's the type of things that real Gaelic speakers look at, and they say that these people, they're not Irish speakers. They're just jumping on a bandwagon. They're just using it for really to stoke tensions and to cause political controversies in this country. And men like Kieran O'Quigley, they don't want to see their Irish language trailed through the mud and used in this way. So let's have a quick look, and I'm not staying for long, but let's have a quick look and see what Shane Walsh thought about Well, what sort of person is he, first of all? Let's look at this. So bear with me for a second. So on your screen, you'll see a thing from An Poblat. That's how you even say that, because I don't know how to pronounce Irish. On the 8th of December 2005. And, interview, radical plan for language revival outlined Irish is central to the Republican struggle. Now, I'm sort of flipping on down through this here, and you'll see that I've got a little bit highlighted here. And this is just to show you and to explain to people, the men behind creating circumstances and where tensions could be stoked. Now, Shana Walsh, this is a comment from him. In the cages of Long Kesh and during the blanket protest, the Irish language, as had been done previously in Irish prisons, became the mainstay of Republican prisoner development and resistance. Now, so they're using the Irish language as resistance. Now, remember that word, resistance. Now, during the blanket, we had nothing but our bodies to use as a weapon of protest. And we utilised the Irish language as a symbolic and practical means of resistance. Now, I'm going to go back to my screen and I'm going to put myself full up there and we'll offload that for a moment. So, try to understand those words. Try to understand who wrote the recent nation building strategy for and on behalf of the Provisional IRA. And, well, what did they say? They were using Irish as a means of resistance. That they used their Irish in the blocks as a weapon. Now, who was Shana Walsh and what did he do? Okay, he said in that little clip that I just read out there that he didn't have any other form of weapon. So the only form of weapon that he had against the British state or the prison service was to, now excuse the expression, and I hope there's no children watching here, to take the poo from his backside and to smother over the walls and to live in that filth, in the excrement, with those flies, with that smell. Now, if anyone can say that that's not an extremist, I would say go and see a psychiatrist, because that's the type of extremist who has written the current Republican nation building strategy. And now, a quote from Shana Walsh just a few years ago on BBC Radio Talkback is that Shana wants to green Northern Ireland street by street using the Irish language. So why does he want to do that? Then we see the vote that was taken in Belfast City Council, where it is largely nationalist controlled, along with the Alliance Party, and they vote through their form of democracy in where that 15% of a street can override 85% of a street and have their Irish language sign put in place, as happened in Shandon Park, whenever 16.8% of those who voted to have a sign wanted an Irish language sign, and almost 50% of the people who said no, well, they were overridden by this policy, and that sign was pushed into place and shoved down their throat. And when anyone dare decide that this is undemocratic, that this is wrong, that this is illegal, this isn't democracy, this isn't what politicians are here to do, whenever they decide to go and cut the Irish piece of that sign out, well, all of a sudden it's a hate crime. All of a sudden, Mr. Nolan from the BBC's out calling this a hate crime. All of a sudden, the PSNI are out with their forensic people dusting signs down. And yet all around this country, there has been signs which are really representative of unionism. And they've been cut out, they've been cut down, they've been spread out. And never once have we ever heard it mentioned as a hate crime. So I'm asking people to understand what's going on here. I'm asking people from the nationalist community who are like us, who understand that your politicians are not working for you, that your politicians mean you most harm, and your politicians would see you really as a second-class citizen in your own land with their immigration policies and with their, well, what do you see? Just like COVID, what will happen is these people will be supporting digital ID, CBDC, cashless society, and which will extend to a social credit system. And that's the point, people. And I'm going to use Andrew Bridgen's words here. When I spoke to him in London about 4 weeks ago, when he said to me, if we don't say no to these politicians, if we don't say no to the government, well, if they get this over the line, we'll never, ever be able to say no to the government ever again. So, on the subject of politicians and mainstream media intentionally causing division, well, they can only cause that division if we rise to their divisional tactics. They can only cause that division if, well, I'm going to say, if brain dead people from both sides of this community want to go and fight with each other over intentional stoking of tensions and causing divisions by politicians. The Alliance Party have a lot to answer for on this subject. So I would like to see maybe a two-pronged approach from nationalists, Catholics, Protestants, Loyalists, Unionists, standing against these politicians and telling them, well, what happened here in the past isn't going to happen here again. And if we've anything to do with it, we will be exposing you, Naomi Long, the Alliance Party, and anyone else that wants to cause and stoke tensions and cause divisions in this country to the point whereby that someone could lose their lives. Thanks for listening. And well, we'll see you all again really soon. So really what I'm going to do here is that this wasn't prepared. I'm going to look for something to maybe play us out with on my screen. So bear with me for a second. Let me just look for a song and bear with me for a wee second because I want to play something on the way out. Look, I'd better not. I'll just play us out with what's known as an outro. Thanks for coming along. Thanks for listening. And I'm going to pop up a video of me in Shandon Park today, pointing out the sign, pointing out the Kensington Road sign, and really showing, how divisive that this policy from Belfast City Council really is. And I have no doubt that if these signs go up in unionist areas, well, what you've seen in Shandon Park, I would say to the PSN, I would say to the Alliance Party, I would say to the BBC, you'll have plenty to talk about, because I don't think they'll be cutting small pieces out of a sign. I think those signs may end up non-existent.
Echoes linger, they're dilled home. Can't kill the truth with a hollow drone. Hands or eyes clenched in fists, history's patterns, they won't be missed.